Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Theater of Pain finally, where I did 6.8k overall. I will mention a lot of people have been asking for this dungeon, and I've been kind of hesitant to make this video because honestly, I still haven't figured out this dungeon completely yet. It's pretty tricky, right? It's hard to do really good overall damage. Like you can see on the key I did before this, I was doing 8.7. On this key, I only do 6.8, right? Because this dungeon, first of all, is not great for Shadow Priest, and second of all, is just kind of tricky, right? So I'll go ahead and hit play. These are the talents I was using. I was playing Naya, and then Death and Madness, Misery, and I was taking Hungering Void over Ancient Madness, mostly because I'm not playing Searing Nightmare or Shadow Crash, but also because this is a Tyrannical week, I believe. And Hungering Void is pretty important on Tyrannical weeks, in my opinion. So we're going to get right into the boss. Not into the boss, into the dungeon. So here we go. And what a lot of people will do is this ad on the left, as you run down these stairs, you can Mind Soothe that guy, and then you can run past. And actually, I think I do Mind Soothe him. No, I don't, because we ended up not going past. But you can Mind Soothe this Unyielding Contender dude, and then you can run past like this wall of dudes. And you have to run pretty close to them, or else you'll still aggro, because it's not like he's sapped or anything. He's not hard CC'd, he's just soft CC'd. And then yeah, I put Vampiric Touch on everything here. And then I pop all my cooldowns on this very first pull. Because we have a Warlock here who's got... he's playing Destruction, I believe. Yeah, he's playing Destruction. And we have a Demon Hunter, which means that on this boss fight coming up, which is 3 targets, right? You would typically want to have all your cooldowns for this. But because of those two guys, they're going to do pretty good damage in a situation like this. So I felt pretty comfortable popping all my cooldowns at the beginning and letting them kind of carry the damage here, at least at the beginning. And you can see this Demon Hunter and the Warlock now are both doing some pretty crazy damage. Right here, I'm checking my Archivist's Codex rep for some reason. Not positive why I'm doing that. And then, yeah, so on this boss fight, usually what we try to do is focus Desia. Oh, and I will also mention, they recently changed this to where... so when this dungeon first came out, there was this little rogue dude that would run around and he would stun people. And you'd have to CC the rogue dude to get people... It was this guy. This little Opportunity Strikes guy. He would run around and stun people. And then in like 9.0, I don't think it was even 9.0.5 yet, they changed that and they got rid of that dude. Or it was bugged or something, to the point where you never had to deal with him, right? He never came out and stunned people. But then with 9.1, it was a ninja hotfix, right? They didn't say anything about it. He just came back, right? So you have to worry about this guy again. But Shadow Priests have a pretty good toolkit for handling those guys. You can Psychic Scream them away. That's kind of hard because they run out in stealth, right? But if you know what's coming up, you can... Or if you... There is like a little graphic that you can see when it starts running in. If you can tell he's close to you, you can Psychic Scream him away and you can save yourself from it. Or... somebody else is going to have to save you from it. But you can save other people as well, like this one. Our Demon Hunter stopped that one. But you can save other people if you play Psychic Horror, right? So you can Psychic Scream them away if they're on other people, or you can Psychic Horror them, stun them in place, and they'll stop, being on top of your homie, right? Which is something you don't want. So then after we've killed Desia, we start working on Sathel. The boss order doesn't matter too much. It's just that every time I've done this dungeon, it feels like Desia is the scariest, and then Sathel's the second scariest, and then this Paceran, or however you say his name, is the least scary, right? So we just focus him down last. And to speak to how I'm playing, when you're on a 3-target boss fight like this, especially, where everything is taking damage and it's all going to live for a long time, you want to put Vampiric Touch on all 3, even if you were playing Twist of Fate here and not Misery, or Searing Nightmare even, where you don't have instant Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain in the same global, you would still want to put both dots on all three, because it's gonna help you, one, get more damage because you've got your 2 dots on everything, so you're doing 2 times your mastery more damage to them, and 2, it's gonna help your single target damage a little bit because you're getting what's it called, shadowy apparitions that are hitting all those other things, those 2 other things as well, and those are increasing your single target damage just a little bit, right? It's not a huge amount, but it is some. And then we're on this Executioner Verruth guy, who this week at least was at the bottom of the stairs. They say that these Executioner dudes, these lieutenants, are supposed to rotate positions. Like, it won't always be this Executioner guy here at the bottom. But at least this week it was, so we're fighting him now. I did pop, it looks like I popped my Power Infusion and Void Form on that guy, so... And then I take this Dagger of Necrotic Wounding on all Tyrannical weeks, basically, because it does pretty good single target damage, and that's what matters on a Tyrannical week. And then, this is one of the moments where Shadow Priest isn't going to do super hot, right? We've got 4 little adds that have like less than 100k HP, and you've got 2 big adds that have, you know, a decent amount of HP, right? So, in a moment like this, when you're playing Misery, you may be wondering, should I dot all 4 of these guys? Should I just dot one of them? What should I do, right? Well, let's see what I did. So I just dotted 2 of them, and then I went back to hitting the elites, right? And the answer to this question is kind of hard, because depending on your group comp, right? I've got a Demon Hunter who's gonna blast those dudes, so I definitely don't have time to put my dots on all 4. But if we were playing, you know, if we had like 2 Shadow Priests and a Destruction Warlock, we're not going to blast those guys too quickly. So you could put Vampiric Touch on all 4. If this was a fortified key as well, like a really high fortified key, and those disgusting refuse were going to live a lot longer, then maybe it's worth it to dot all of them. But this is kind of why Shadow Priest's overall damage is going to be kind of lower on this key, because you'll have stuff like this where... you have multiple targets that other people can hit a lot, but you can't really hit them a lot effectively, right? Because you could put Vampiric Touch on everything and start trying to hit it all, but if it's not going to live very long, like in this case, then you can see I'm doing like less damage than the tank for a couple moments here, right? Because the other 2 guys are going to be able to hit those things way better than me, right? I pop Mindbender, and then I pop Void Form here. That is one thing that we have going for us. In situations like this, Mindbender with Shadow Flame Prism is pretty good for this, because it'll hit multiple things like that. And you'll see that my damage is going up a decent amount there. But, like I said, it's kind of hard, especially with these things being non-elites, right? In this pack, however, all 3 are elites, so I'm definitely going to dot all 3. And then I'm Mind Searing when the 3 of them are close to each other, and I should be Mind Flaying when they're not all 3 stacked on top of each other. I pop Power Infusion here right after it comes off cooldown, and then I'm focusing on killing probably these Sludge Spewers first, and then I'm going to work on the big guy, right? But you definitely want to have your both dots on all 3 of these dudes, because this fight was like, it's almost 45 seconds and things aren't all dead. So you're definitely going to have enough time to get some pretty good damage from your shadowy apparitions and everything. And then we're moving on to this guy. One thing I'll mention about these gas bag dudes, this Vile Eruption cast that they do that has a frontal and a reversal, I guess? One that comes out the back, if you know what I mean. These guys, it's a pretty short range. So like where I'm standing right here, he could be pointed right at me, which he basically is, and it won't hit me, right? So you don't have to always worry about getting in the side safe spots. You can outrange it, and you can hit him while he can't hit you with that, right? So you can be right in front of him as long as you're far enough away. And then you pretty much always have to pull one of these guys before you can do the lieutenant that's over here on the side. Sorry. Although there may be strategies in the future where people just pull that gas bag into the lieutenant when we get a lot of gear, or maybe you you wait till the gas bag is over on the side, and then everybody runs past and fights the lieutenant on this side of the room kind of thing. But I think it's way easier, more simple, if you just pull the gas bag out of the room, then go in and fight the lieutenant. Especially because now you don't have to worry about it throwing off your prideful percentage, right? Because we don't have to deal with prideful anymore. So it's not like killing those gas bags are going to give you prideful at a weird spot or anything. Right here, our warlock had the biting cold thing on him, and he got hit by this frontal. So he ends up getting into the pod, but our healer keeps him alive, which is nice. We have another Frost Lance coming out, and we managed to dodge this one just fine. I'll mention again, this biting cold thing stays on you even after the lieutenant is dead. Jeez, I can't talk. Even after the lieutenant is dead, that biting cold will stay on you. So I almost always cast at least one Shadow Mend on myself while I'm waiting for it to fall off, because there are times when your healer won't realize it and they'll just let you sit there and die, which is not ideal, I would say. And then right here on this pack, you've got 2 non-elites and then 3 elites. And what I chose to do was just put Vampiric Touch on the 3 elites and not worry about the 2 non-elites. And then anytime that I would be casting Mind Flay here, I should be casting Mind Seer instead, because there were 5 targets. Now that stuff is dying, I would be back to casting regular Mind Flay, because there's just the 1 target. For anyone who doesn't know, because I haven't mentioned this in a while, Mind Flay will only ever give you 3 insanity per tick, and it only hits the 1 target, right? Whereas Mind Seer will give you 1 insanity per tick per thing it hits, and it will do damage to everything in the area, right? So you only want to use Mind Flay when you're hitting either 1 or 2 things, and if you're hitting 3 or more things, you want to use Mind Seer, because not only will it do damage to all 3 things, but it gives you just as much insanity generation as Mind Flay would, which means you can get more Devouring Plagues or Searing Nightmares or whatever you're trying to cast that takes insanity, right? So anytime, and the other thing I'll mention is when you're doing Mythic Plus like this, you need to think about how many things are still alive, because it changes your rotation. So right here I'm casting Mind Flay, but before, when there were like 5 or 6 things right there, I was casting Mind Seer. And then as stuff starts dying, you need to realize, oh, now there's only 2 targets, so I should be casting Mind Flay here, which I am, right? And the reason you want to cast Mind Flay over Mind Seer on 2 targets is because, like I was saying, it does damage to both targets, but it only gives you 1 insanity each, right? So it'll give you 2 insanity for every tick, whereas Mind Flay will give you 3 insanity for every tick. And it just so happens that the 3 insanity every tick is significant enough, like it gives you enough Devouring Plagues or Searing Nightmares or whatever you're looking for, typically Devouring Plague, where it's better to use Mind Flay in that scenario, right? When you're on 2 targets, and then you only want to swap to Mind Seer when you're on 3+, right? So right here we move into Gorechop. I've got all my cooldowns running, Void Form, Mindbender, and Power Infusion, so I should be doing pretty good damage. And then these oozing leftover dudes come out, right? So you have the option to, you could dot these guys if you want. You could also snipe them with Shadow Word Death for your Death and Madness procs, right? But they killed themselves over time, so it's not super worth it to put dots on them. Although I do dot one of them right here, because, like I said, they're going to kill themselves over time, so it's not like you're getting a ton of value from dotting this one guy. Although I will start sniping them with Shadow Word Death right here, and I did dot that one, which I'm not sure if that is the right play. Because, like I was saying before, if you dot multiple things, right, with your Vampiric Touch, then you're going to get more Shadowy Apparitions coming out, which means you're going to get more Insanity Gen from your Shadowy Apparitions, right, which means your single target will go up a little bit. But those things don't live super long, so maybe you don't get very much Insanity from them. I will mention, though, when they group up like that on top of the boss, I should be casting Mind Seer instead of Mind Flay, because, again, that's 3 targets, right? And it is helpful to kill those oozing refuse. What are they? Oozing leftovers is what they're called. It is helpful to kill them. So doing Mind Sear damage to them is not bad, right? But again, they kill themselves eventually, so it's not super worth it to be hitting them, right? A Vampiric Embrace during this boss fight is not a bad idea, although there's not a ton of unavoidable damage, right? Those meat hooks that come out hurt, but then other than that, really, I mean, like, the leftovers jumping on people is like the only thing that will hit you in this fight, as long as you're not, that is completely unavoidable, I mean, because you can't dodge these guys jumping at you as far as I know. Maybe you could, like, Night Fae blink it as they jump, but it's definitely not worth it, right? But yeah, so there's not a ton of damage coming out, which means, not a ton of unavoidable damage, I should say, which means that your healer shouldn't be having a crazy hard time keeping everybody up. Really, the only person taking a lot of damage on that boss fight in particular is the tank, or should be the tank for the most part, because the boss does like the Hateful Strike thing on him, and then the boss is meleeing him and all that, whereas we don't really, like I said, there's a ton of avoidable damage, not a ton of unavoidable damage. So now we're going to head towards the Lich dude who's in here, the Kel'Thuzad looking guy. And again, we do this like most groups do this. The tank runs out, pulls half the shackled souls, and then we'll come back. Something you could do is if you talk to your tank, you could be like, hey, I'm going to grip you and bring him back. That is definitely something that could be helpful for especially less mobile tanks. And then I pop Void Form on these guys, but I don't really have a ton to do here when I'm playing Misery and Death and Madness, right? Because Searing Nightmare and Shadow Crash would get a pretty good amount of damage out here, but like our Demon Hunter and our Destruction Warlock are doing all the damage there. Like he popped Infernal, the Destruction Warlock. So the Shackled Souls, if they were going to live a long time, like if this was a fortified week and these things were going to live 30 plus seconds, then I would dot all of them. And I actually do dot all of them here after the Demon Hunter and the Warlock have popped their cooldowns at this point, because they're going to live long enough now for my apparitions to do decent damage to them, right? So I'm Mind Searing here. I cast that instant cast Mind Blast while I'm Mind Searing. My Power Infusion's ready, but I am probably going to hold it for this Mind Bender on this next, what's the guy called? He's like a Soul Storm dude. He's a something, Portal Guardian. His name's Portal Guardian, but he casts like Soul Storm or something. So yeah, so this is when I popped my cooldowns, because we want to kill this guy pretty quick. Also, if we pull fast enough after this guy, my cooldowns will still be up when we go into the Incinerator Archelath or whatever. And we actually pulled him while we're doing this guy, which is not a horrible idea in my opinion, especially if your group has a Shadow Priest with them. Like pretty much all good groups should, in my opinion. Wink, wink. Bring Shadow Priests to keys. Shadow Priests like to chain pull, less so than we did in the past. Back in BFA or Legion or whatever, it was pretty important for us to chain pull so that we could stay in Void Form longer, right? These days it's less important, but we do still like to be chain pulling, especially when we are in Void Form or we are in our cooldowns, right? Because our cooldown windows are currently running and there's nothing to fight, right? So we want to pull as quickly as possible. And then again, I'll mention on that Incinerator guy, I walk off here without choosing a power, but then I walk back because I remembered. Good job past me. On that Incinerator guy, he'll cast Melt Soul, which puts a fire debuff on 2 people at a time. And typically, your healer is only going to be able to get 1 Dispel, and then it's going to be like another 8 seconds or something before they can get the other Dispel. And by that time, there will be 2 more debuffs that have gone out. So if your healer starts to lag behind in the Dispels, that's a great time to be hitting Mass Dispel, right? You lose nothing by doing it. You lose 1 global and a little bit of mana is what you actually lose. But you lose very little DPS, and it can help a lot, right? Especially if you guys are having a really hard time killing that dude. Definitely Mass Dispel that stuff off, right? We got another Portal Guardian here, and this pack in particular is kind of sketchy. This Bone Magus will cast a Bone Spear at people. This needs to be kicked every time, or it's going to do big damage. We barely kick it right there. I'm standing in this AMZ as well. That's something you need to keep an eye on. I pop Vampiric Embrace here because it's looking kind of sketchy. I could also mass dispel these two things off. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I do try to at the end, and I get one of them, so that's a feels good, man. But yeah, on that pack in particular, there's Necrotic Bolt volleys that you need to kick. The Portal Guardian will do Soul Storm, or whatever it's called, which is a lot of unavoidable damage. And then also the Bone Spears need to be kicked every time. And then we're playing Dodge the Tornadoes. So this is, it's super easy to dodge these if you just keep an eye out and then move every time one is about to go off, right? You just step back and forth. Because they usually won't go off at the exact same time. Although that would be better, because if they both point at one location, you can just move and you're fine. But when they're going off alternating like this, it's super easy. You just stand in one spot, it points at you, you move 5 feet to the right or whatever, and then it turns and points that way, you move back. You don't have to run like in circles or all over the place. You want to be efficient with your movement, right? So only move as far as you have to, and don't move where you don't have to, right? And then on this next platform, we have another Bone Magus or whatever you call them. I put Vampiric Touch on all three, and then I'm watching these Death Winds because I want to life grip anybody who gets caught by one of these if I can. And then they have these magic debuffs that go out. Again, this is something that we can stop. We can not stop these, but we can mass dispel these off. So usually I try to wait until there's like 3, like I just mass dispelled 3 off right there. I try to wait until there's like 3 and it looks like our healer is falling behind and stuff like that. Because there's a fine line between trying to help the healer and sacrificing your own job to try and do the healer's job, right? You don't want to be like spamming Shadow Mends on people when you don't have to, or putting Power Word Shields on people when you don't have to. There are times where those are good things to be doing, but there are also times where you should just let your healer heal, and it's more important for you to be doing, big damage. So we go into this boss fight, and I don't really have any cooldowns. I did pop Power Infusion as we started this boss fight, but my Mindbender and my Void Form weren't ready. And then I get this Draw Soul on me, so I go stand in the Grabby Hands so that I get it immediately back. And then I pop Mindbender, and I'm about to go into Void Form. So I did manage to line those two up, which is nice, but again, it's nice to have them on pull. Although I don't know really, I think I popped them on the last platform, and maybe that's why, or maybe even the platform before. And then this is a feels bad moment when you get a volcano under you while you're rooted. There's nothing really you can do about that. Although, if it is really sketchy like that, let's say I was at 20% HP, 15% HP, something like that, and one of those volcanoes did spawn under me, and I was rooted in this Grabby Hand, so there's like no way to dodge it, you can pop Dispersion, and what Dispersion will do is it will break any roots that are on you. It'll also give you 50% increased movement speed, and it'll give you 75% damage reduction. So if you just hit Dispersion and don't move at all, and then you get hit by the Volcanic Plume, you're way more likely to survive it, because you're taking 75% less damage. But also, by hitting Dispersion, you're allowing yourself to move, right? You're out of the root, so you can walk out of the Volcanic Plume, right? Although, there are like times where you would want to do that and times where you would not. The other thing I'll mention, which is another point in the Night Fae corner, you can press Soul Shape while you're rooted, and it will teleport you, right? So this has been very useful to me in PvP, especially because you'll get Boomkins who will cast Root Beam on you. So they'll Entangling Roots you, and then they'll put you in a Solar Beam. So you're silenced for like 6 seconds or something crazy. You just have to sit there and let them kill you, basically. Except if you're a Night Fae, you can Soul Shape out of those. So you don't have to sit there and let them blast you, right? You will still be rooted after the Soul Shape teleport, but you will no longer be silenced because you're not in the Solar Beam anymore. So that can also translate over to Mythic Plus, right? If I was in those Grabby Hands and there was a Volcanic Plume under me, I could Soul Shape out of it, right? Same thing goes for any kind of root. You can Soul Shape while rooted, and you will teleport, right? So it's good to know that interaction exists. Also, if you have a slow tank like this, an immobile tank like a Death Knight, like we do, you should be looking for opportunities to grip them to where they're trying to go, just to help with time, right? We're going to have an easy time timing this key. We're almost to the third boss. Like, we're working on getting to the third boss, and we have 14 minutes left. So it's quite likely we'll time this key. Also, I'm still using this old weak aura that has the 8.3 obelisks on it. I should really find maybe a better weak aura to do this. And then we have to be careful not to pull this Tin Man over here, Sagadon. And then we're going to focus down this, what's this guy's name? Dokig, the Brutalizer. We're going to focus him down. He does this brutal leap, very scary, easy to dodge, just walk out of it. And then, yeah, I'm just doing my single target stuff here. And really, from what I've been able to tell, I guess on a Tyrannical week, it's a bit different, because on Fortified weeks, Trash will live longer. But from what I've been able to tell, in Theater of Pain, Shadow Priest's overall damage is mostly going to come from boss fights and your single target damage, right? So, this is a mini boss. So this is another moment where I'm going to be pretty high up there on the damage meters. Me and the Warlock are really close. Actually, even the Demon Hunter is really close to us. But yeah, like something like Sagadon, I'm just going to be going full single target on this guy, and I should be pretty high, right? Like I'm almost doing 10k, and the other two are going to catch up to me now that they've got the bindings to hit. But that's another thing I'll mention. Let me go back just a little bit. But I should be, like I was saying, I should be doing most of the damage to this guy. And then you'll notice right here, I'm casting Void Eruption after he brings us in. This is a bit of a patter move, but also it is good if you don't have damage for these Bindings of Misery. Void Eruption will cast two little tendril thingies that go and hit every single one of these. So what I do, I had Void Eruption ready to fight this guy, but I saved it until this Bindings came out. And then I cast my Void Eruption, it goes out and hits all of those things. You see all these 1,400 little thingies. And it helps finish off those Bindings, even though the Demon Hunter is already eye-beaming them, and they're going to die to him anyway, right? But also it puts you in Void form, which is good for this single target. And then there's not a ton of damage that goes out here as well, except for on the tank with that Crush ability. So you could be using Vampiric Embrace for this. It would help with like those seismic wave moments, but your healer doesn't really have anything else to be healing anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then right there, I was close enough, so I'm not entirely sure, so maybe I won't speak too much about it, but I think if you stand close enough to Sagadon, he won't put a binding on you when he grips you, because you're not like getting gripped in or something, or maybe there was some other thing that stopped me from getting the thing on me right there. But regardless, I didn't get the shackle thing on me, so I just sat there and blasted. Also, I will mention, I put a shackle undead on this ancient captain over here. That's something you may or may not choose to do. It's not like super important. It doesn't help like a ton, but it does help a little bit. It lets you, as soon as this guy is dead, you can move on to those guys. And actually, we pull these guys in because the captain is shackled. We can pull. So this is going to be really sketchy, actually. I'm not sure if we're going to survive this, because we have the main mini boss that we're fighting, and we just pulled two ossified conscripts in, and the shambling arbalests, which are really deadly. They have the spear thing that they shoot at people. All of these things are fighting us at the same time, and now the ancient captain is broken. I wonder if the Death Knight there gripped the ad on accident. But in a moment like this is a good teaching moment, because maybe we won't wipe here, but yeah, actually I don't think we will. In a moment like that where you're gonna wipe, probably, maybe we do. Anyway, if it's looking like you're gonna wipe, your goal should not be to kill everything. Your goal should just be to kill the things that are low, right? Because anything that you can kill when you wipe, everything is going to go back to full HP, right? So anything that's dead won't go back to full HP, but anything that is, any damage that you do to it is going to be completely negated, because it's going to re-heal to full, right? So if you are about to wipe like that, we didn't wipe, but it was pretty sketchy. So what I was doing was focusing down the mini boss and ignoring everything else, because the mini boss, one, is the most deadly thing in that pack, and two, was the lowest, right? So if we can kill even one thing, it's going to mean that the next time we pull, we're going to have one less thing to worry about, right? And it's going to be a bit of an easier pack. So I popped my Mindbender for this. I'm holding Void Form. Hopefully I don't press Void Form before we get to the boss, because usually on Prideful keys, I might hit Void Form here because we're going to have a Prideful right after this in the past. But because we're no longer on Prideful, we will no longer have Pridefuls right after this, which means we're going straight boss after this. So yeah, I don't pop Void Form here. I save it for the boss fight. I also have Fey Guardians up, but unfortunately I've got like 20 seconds on Power Infusion and Mindbender, and we're just going to start the boss immediately, so I don't really have time to wait for them. So I put my dots on things on the boss, and then I pop Fey Guardians, and then I pop Void Form. So I will mention, if I go back just a little bit, right here, I'll do Vampiric Touch, Fey Guardians, Mind Blast, and then Void Form. It's questionable whether that was the right call. It's probably better to do Vampiric Touch, then Mindbender, then Fey Guardians, then Void Eruption. In this case specifically, because I don't have Mindbender or Power Infusion up. And usually the reason why we press Fey Guardians before Shadow Word Death and Mind Blast when you have Mindbender running is because Fey Guardians gives you a bunch of stacks of this Grove Invigoration buff, which gives you a bunch of mastery, which means that your Shadow Flame Rifts, the first two that you get with Shadow Word Death and Mind Blast from your Mindbender, are going to do extra damage because you've got more mastery, right? But in this case, all it does is gives me a little bit more mastery for this one Mind Blast. And then I go into Void Eruption. So I lose like 2 globals worth of cooldown reduction on this Void Form because of that. But I get a little bit of mastery for the... It's not a little bit, it's a pretty big amount. But I get some mastery for the first Mind Blast, which is honestly like a very, very, very small damage increase, right? So right here, I've got my Mindbender and my Power Infusion, but I don't use them. And then I get lucky enough, this is why I didn't use them, I get lucky enough that I don't get chosen to go down. So then I do pop my Power Infusion and my Mindbender here, and I start blasting the boss, right? Some things that people have asked me, especially with my video that just came out about Shadow Priest cooldowns, some things that people have asked are like, is it worth it to press Void Form if you're not going to have Power Infusion attached? Or is it worth it to press Mindbender if you're not going to have Void Form attached? That kind of thing, right? Because Mindbender by itself is pretty lackluster, but Mindbender with Void Form is pretty good, right? Because you get your regular Mind Blasts, so you get the 1 before you go into Void Form, and then you get 2 while you're in Void Form, and you have got 2 charges that are on separate cooldowns, so you'll have, a lot more Mind Blasts than you would without Void Form. And the answer to that is really, in most cases, yes, as long as you're not like losing a use or stuff like that. Like I talked about it a decent amount in the Shadow Priest cooldowns video, but if you're I get the hunted here, which is kind of nuts. If you are, it's totally fine to use your Mindbender by itself, right? There's no problems with that. And in a lot of cases, it's the right choice. Right here, this is my friend Meta. Right here, I wanted to show him who's boss. So I definitely did not play optimally for dungeon timing reasons, right? You should not pop cooldowns on your friends. You should not Psychic Scream them and stun them. You should just choose one of the two of you who is gonna die and then the other one kills them. But in that case, he cast the hunt on me and he was acting like he's a big tough guy. So I figured I would kill him and show him what's up, right? So Meta, if you're watching this, sorry homie, I'm just the better PvPer, dude. And so anyway, yeah, we're just back into the regular boss fight. If this was like a high key or something that we really were super worried about timing or something, then I definitely would just let Meta kill me here, because it's better for he can kill me faster and it's probably, we're better off having him kill me. And then right here I do it again. I actually pop Mindbender and Power Infusion on him right here, and then I don't have enough time to kill him because we kill the boss. So you live to fight another day meta. Feels good. And then something I will mention, if you put Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain on your friends, and then the boss dies, you can Master Spell this off. But I figured I'd just let it tick on him because he ticked me off, dude. And then, yeah, we're going to move on to the very last boss fight. Part of the reason that, I don't have Power Infusion or Mindbender going into this boss fight because I just used it on meta. So that is obviously suboptimal and will hurt my overall DPS. But it definitely doesn't hurt my pride because I won the PvP, right? So typically you would have Power Infusion and Mindbender on pull here. And what I like to do is I pop all my cooldowns on pull pretty much every time. Most groups will save Lust for 50% because the first 50% of this boss fight is not dangerous like at all. It's just got it's got this Reaping Scythe and it's got the frontal that you have to worry about, but other than that, there's like nothing going on. And the last 50% is pretty sketchy, right? You've got the bulls running everywhere, you got the ancient champion dudes who are spawning and attacking each other that you have to dodge. You got the grasping rifts. Oh, you get the grasping rifts in the first phase 2, I guess. But there's like it's sketchier in phase 2. So a lot of people won't Lust until then. I get hit by a volcanic right there that almost knocks me into the rift. That would have been bad. But we opted to Lust right here at the beginning, which is my preference as well, because a lot of people will save cooldowns for right when the boss starts. And if you're Lusting at 50%, there's no guarantee that everybody still has their cooldowns. Obviously, maybe this isn't obvious, but something you should do if you're in a coordinated group, you and your friends pushing like a 25 or whatever, the hardest key you've ever done, you should plan this kind of stuff beforehand, right? You should say, okay, we're going to do this pull and then this pull, and then we're going to pop these cooldowns here, we're going to pop these cooldowns here, that kind of thing. You should know what you should be saving your cooldowns for. There should be no question about, oh, do I pop my cooldowns on this pack or do I let somebody else do it? You should have that all planned out beforehand, right? And if you don't have it planned out beforehand, then you should use the run you're currently doing to get an idea of what you should do next time, right? But that's one thing that I've noticed, and even in my push group from last season where we were pushing pretty high, right? We would kind of make those decisions on the fly, where you could make those decisions before you even start the key, right? And I think it's always better to have a plan rather than not have a plan and just wing it. So you should know whether you're going to be lusting on 50% or if you're going to lust on pull on this boss. And then you should be, holding or using your cooldowns accordingly, right? But like I said, that's something that you can plan beforehand. Okay, so that's going to be the end of the boss fight. And that's the end of the key. I did 6.8k overall DPS. And actually, we were all so close to the funny number, 6.9k. Almost made it, but not quite. Hopefully this video helped. Maybe it wasn't. I know this wasn't the best. I didn't do the most damage, so this isn't the best run to look at. But hopefully you did learn something. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. Maybe share it with your friends. And then check the description, because I do stream on Twitch. I haven't been doing keys on Twitch recently, but I have plans to do keys on Twitch. So maybe catch me on Twitch doing some keys sometime. And then I have a Discord server as well if you want to stop by and chat with other Shadow Priests. We have about 200 people in there now. So there's some pretty good discussion that happens. Feel free to stop by if you want to talk to me or if you want to talk to other Shadow Priests, right? We got a nice little community there. So that's going to be the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!